Okay, I'll call the regular meeting of council to order at 3 p.m. for September 13th. As per motion from Councillor Masterman, the council adopt the agenda for the regular council meeting September 13th as amended to include or to remove item 7.6, the real property acquisition, to add in item 8.5 being the Rotary Path Project update, and item 9.3 being the Site Finders Elevator project update.
I'll make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
All in favor? Carried. Consent agenda, I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk that the following are adopted by omnibus motion in accordance with council's procedure bylaw. July 21st, special council meeting minutes, August 9th, regular council meeting minutes, and the strategic priorities chart.
I will make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. There are no public comments, so we'll move right into the CVAC recommendations, and I'll hand it to you, Janelle.
Excellent, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I do believe we were going to be joined by Angela Caldwell, who will give the presentation today.
Hi, everyone. Just trying to get.
Angela.
How is everybody?
Excellent. There you are.
There we are. All this technology, right? So
You got it.
thank you for having me. So we had a request from the Spitzy Playground community. I think all of you guys got a copy of that request. They are a volunteer-run parent committee, and they have requested $20,000 from the Community Vitality Advisory Committee to help complete phase 1 of the playground. So really kind of a background of our meeting there, every member of our committee was 100% for funding the project, as it works out to less than 7% of what their project is. So the 20,000 is less than 7% of their $313,000 need for this new playground. It's also in line with our CVAC objectives, as it has a large and lasting impact within our community. Only one member of our committee kind of thought that the ask was a bit high just based on what's left in our budget, right? So after this is funded, if you guys choose to fund it, we will only have $12,000 for the rest of the year. But once everybody kind of went through their reasons for funding it, that person was 100% for thinking that was a fair ask. We also kind of think it, as a group, we feel that it's a very difficult job for these parents to fund these playgrounds. So we thought giving them the $20,000 was kind of a small ask for the amount of work they have to do to get these new playgrounds. So as a result, kind of our brief Coles notes there, we request that council support our recommendation and reward $20,000 to the Spitzy School Playground Committee from the Community Vitality Fund. That's a lot of words. Does anybody have any questions or comments about that?
Thanks, Angela. And personally, I could not support this more. I think it's fantastic, the amount of work these parents have done. Talked to a couple of them over the last year or so about it, and it's going to be great. They need a little help, so this is fantastic. Well done. Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and Angela, thanks so much for the presentation and for the good work that your committee is doing on all community things. I don't have a question. I have a comment, and I made the same comment at CVAC the other day, and I have absolutely nothing to lose, so I'm going to say it again today. In the old days, this is a wonderful project. It's a wonderful project for the community. It's a wonderful project for the school. In the old days, the province would have paid for this. And because education is under the realm of provincial government. Many years ago, the provincial government stopped funding things like this. And the school division doesn't even fund even a part of it. They sent a letter of support, Foothill School Division, and as did John Barlow, Member of Parliament. Letter of support, wonderful, great to have. Doesn't even cost a stamp these days because you just press send and it arrives. I just think as you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, this is a testament to the hard work of the community, of the people who had a vision and are making it happen. But I just think it's a shame that it's coming down to them having to come hat in hand to not just to the town, but to various other businesses and organizations and raise some money for this thing. With any help at all from the provincial government. And so I'll just leave that at that. And my comments certainly are not a reflection on CVAC's decision, which is an excellent one. So thanks so much.
Thank you. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I may have something to lose or not, I don't know, but I totally support this project. And I will say shame on the Foothill School Division and the province of Alberta. I do see that the school division put in, looks like 18,370 as per the report. But still, that's nowhere near what is enough needed to complete this project. So good on you guys over there, and I'll support it 100%. Thank you.
Everybody's chucking bombs. Councillor Cooey, who are you going after?
I just want to keep it rolling here now. Thanks, Ange, and thanks to the CVAC committee for bringing this forward. I mean, I look at the exorbitant cost of a children's playground, and part of that cost is because of the regulations and restrictions, which are meant to keep our kids safe, but in the end drive this cost up to where we're going to see schools without playgrounds, I'm sure, one day, because I know a friend over there that's a teacher, and he says he can't retire till they raise this fund. There's going to be a lot of bottle drives and bake sales. So anyways, 100% support this project, and kudos to those parents out there working really hard to make this a reality, and a great benefit to that area in our community.
Well done. Thanks, Angela. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Cooey that Council award the Spitzy School Playground Committee $20,000 from the Community Vitality Advisory Fund, whatever we call that. It's not in my notes, but I just made it up, to support the Spitzy School Playground Initiative.
I will very happily give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Angela.
Thank you guys, have fun.
Take care.
Thank you, see you later.
Election sign bylaw amendment, Kieran.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The election sign bylaw was passed on September 9th, 2019 to regulate the placement or installation of election signs during election campaign periods on public roads, highways, and other areas or properties that are under the town's direction, control, and management, and considered public land, and to a certain extent to include private lands, to prevent the unrestrained proliferation of election signs that would create hazardous situations affecting pedestrians and motorists while maintaining effective dissemination of candidates' information to the electorate. The amending bylaw is to correct the following. Amend section 13 to include subsection letter J to be read as Site 10, northeast corner of 2nd Avenue and 20th Street Northeast, and amend Appendix A to be renamed as Appendix A1, and to add Appendix A2 to include a zoomed in map election sign sites to clarify the basic site locations for the placement or installation of election signs on public land are as followed and included in Appendix A1. And to also amend Section 20 to read as follows. Election signs must identify an election campaign and be placed or installed on the approved site locations no sooner than 30 days prior to an election and removed within 7 days following the election day on public lands where they are allowed to be present as set out in Section 13. If adopted, I will be sending an updated election sign bylaw to the candidates of the election. I can now answer any questions you may have.
Questions from council? Councillor Masterman?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Just very, very quickly, and thanks, Karen. I'm just wondering if anybody, I had heard, and maybe council can clarify this, but I had heard that maybe some elections, municipal election signs have been set out already on public land, and if anybody could confirm or just say I'm out to lunch on what I heard. And also I'm just wondering, back in 2017, there were a lot of people who tested our bylaw, to put it politely, and a lot of candidates tested the bylaw by putting signs in other places or putting more than one sign. And I'm just kind of wondering how whether we will be enforcing this or through action or through education or what, and I don't know if this is maybe better answered by Chris or somebody. Thanks.
I can answer this one. Chris can jump in if he feels I've missed anything. So what we have done is for all of the federal candidates, we have sent the election sign bylaw to them. And then for any of our local candidates, because we have their nomination papers and their contact information, as soon as we have received their nomination papers, they receive a copy of the election sign bylaw now. We've updated the process so that it includes that. Excuse me. For signs that are out right now, we have been trying to monitor what is out there. If we receive a complaint or if we notice a sign that is out and is not within the election sign bylaw, our process is that we will email the campaign manager or the candidate directly and advise them that their signs are outside of the election sign bylaw and give them 24 hours to remove or place that sign somewhere else, depending on what the scenario is. And then if it is not removed, then we will contact bylaw services and work with them to have enforcement.
Thanks, Jody. I think if I read this right, for municipal election signs, they're not supposed to be out until September 20th. Is that correct? 30 days or a month before the election?
Yes,
so,
it does state 30 days before the election.
Yeah, so anything that is out now should be reported to you or to bylaw or somebody, right?
Yep, we can take them here at Legislative Services to give them that 24-hour notice before it's escalated to bylaw.
Okay, great. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you.
The 30 days only applies to signs on public land, though. You can have it on private property all year if you'd like. So
yeah, thanks for that.
So
thanks for that clarification, Craig.
Yeah,
Mr. Mayor.
Somebody put their hand down. Can't remember. Was it Jamie? You're good.
You clarified for me, Mayor. On it's not really clear in the bylaw that the 30 days applies to public lands, and maybe I don't know if it needs to have a change in there, but maybe we should have that it applies to public lands only. And I'd assume that's the same for removal of signs. I don't know why we give people 7 days to take their signs down. I would like to see that narrowed down, but I'm okay with passing this bylaw as is today. Thank you.
Well, I think it took former Councillor Brankovich a month and a half to get all of those down, so we had to give him at least a week.
Okay, fair enough.
It's because he needed a B train to haul them all out. The Brankovich bylaw, we always call this. Love you, Dragon. Okay, so in the, just going with what Jamie said, you know, in the wording of the update that we're doing today, approve site location no 30 days and within 7 days following the election day on public lands where they are allowed to be present, set out in section 13. So yeah. In order to specify that this section only applies to signs located on public lands, but yeah, it's maybe a little iffy, but the word is that no signs on public land until 30 days before the election period. Right? Cool. Ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn. The council give first reading to bylaw 4602/2021, being the amending election sign bylaw. And I am not going to read everything again that Kieran already read. So,
Well, thank you, Mayor. Since I recognize that tie, I will certainly give you that motion.
we're going there, hey? All right, game on. Motion from Councillor Kinghorn, discluding my tie. All in favor? Carried. Ask for a motion the council gives second reading to the previously mentioned bylaw. From Councillor Cooey.
I will also give you the enhanced Brankovich bylaw.
Okay. All in favor for second reading? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Moore that all council present give unanimous consent to proceed with third and final reading of the previously mentioned bylaw.
I will make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman that council give third and final reading to the previously mentioned bylaw.
Yes, I'll make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Thanks very much, Kieran. Blanket variance for existing lots policy.
Mr. Mayor.
Hello,
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm just going to share here a map so that you have a map on the screen here. Okay, and then just yeah. So during the land use bylaw monitoring program, administration identified two main regulations in the land use bylaw that applicants frequently requested variances on, and those include the driveway width and the garage projection. The areas that are most impacted are Hampton Hills, Montrose, and the Northwest, which include Highwood Village and Vista Mirage. These areas generally they have long and narrow lots and do not have rear lanes. And so, because rear lanes were not required when these areas were developed in the past. Now, the new land use bylaw makes a rear lane a requirement. So it's different process and different requirements right now. So we would just want to make sure that the development is continuous within these areas and consistent with what's happening in the area. It's never changing the urban fabric or the landscape or the streetscape of the area. We want to just make sure that they're aligned and consistent with the previously developed areas. And so, but moving forward, the expectation is that all new plans of subdivisions, including the future phases of Hampton Hills and Montrose, they should fully comply with the land use bylaw, including the provision of laneways, so that variances of driveway location and garage projection would not be required in the future. It's important to highlight to council that none of these variances of the two specific regulations have been subject to public appeal. And we have never also received any concerns from the public, which is very positive, which support our direction here. Allowing the blanket variances would support these developers to develop and continue development of these areas in accordance to what has already been in place. So based on previous discussion with council and based on your direction, administration already went ahead and implemented the direction, and we worked with developers, but we haven't given them a written note because council has not formally approved the policy. But once council approve the policy, we will give them a written advice about the whole policy and the procedure and whatnot. But right now, we've already went ahead and implemented this direction. That's all I can say at this point. If you have any questions, please do so.
Okay, thanks, Ali. This isn't the first time the council's seen this. This wasn't attached to the last agenda, so we didn't want to vote on it until it was actually embedded into the agenda, and we had everything here so that the public knew what we were talking about. So, are there any questions from council? See none, I hear none. Ask for a motion from Councillor Cooey that council adopt policy POL 22-110-00 entitled blanket variances for existing lots policy as presented.
I will give you that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
All in favor? Motion carries. On to the next one, the infill variance application, Khalid.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's here. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, just a quick kind of background. As we all know, the infill areas referenced in the policy are the older communities within the town. And they generally include real laneways, and they're relatively close to the street. So this style of residential development is really being encouraged in the old and in new communities as well. And the new land by law provide regulation to support that direction. The new land by law does not allow access from primary and secondary thoroughfares when rear lanes exist. And this is particularly the challenge where, especially when there are vacant lots, developers try to come and change the look of the property. They try to put front driveways and garages, even though the formal real property reports indicate that the previous development had garages built in the rear lane that could be accessed through the rear lane. And so we ask them for rationales, and they normally find difficulties in provide the real strong rationale that support why they're changing the configuration of the property and trying to put all of a sudden front garages and whatnot. And so this at times become very contentious, and that's why administration really believe consulting with members of council at the committee as a whole will make a lot of sense and will help us also have additional set of eyes to give us some more input and directions in making this decision, because we want to make sure that the integrity of a lot of neighborhoods are really protected, but that protection sometimes comes with a lot of pushback from developers. So really, it will allow us to consult council at the committee of the whole meeting before we can make a decision. And so we will take the input from members of council at the COW meeting and use it in evaluating the applications and specifically the variances, and make a decision whether supporting or rejecting the specific variance applications. This would include all type of variances, even variances they wouldn't even require a development in the normal circumstances. For example, for signages, we need to really, if there is a variances, we will run them by council. If there is a major home occupation, intensifications of use, all those kind of things. A lot of sometimes they just go against the bylaw, and we could grant the variance, but it's critical that council involved so that we really together we know exactly what community we're creating for our future here. That's all I can say right now. If you have any questions, council, please go ahead.
Thanks, Ali. And this one was really important to me, because the issue that we're running into is regardless of administration's decision, council eats it. Council gets it at the end of the day with so when you're doing, whether it's actual infill development in these two areas, or you're like a lot in the Southwest right now, where it's just basically rebuilding the home from the flood. How that new home looks can be significantly different than kind of what the neighborhood is. And so, granting a variance, nobody knows anything. And I got problems with our little sandwich boards in size 10 font on the side of the, we need to discuss that in the future as to how we actually advertise these variances. But it's very hard, even when you're in, I've been doing this for 8 years and reading this kind of stuff, and a lot of these variance applications and the sandwich boards that go out there, it's hard for me to figure out sometimes exactly what's going on that property, what they're actually asking for. That's why I want it brought back to council, so that council can understand what's going on before the build happens, rather than the build starting and the neighbors starting to freak out, going, why the hell would a council ever allow this to happen? Or why would the town ever allow this type of house to be built? This has happened a lot in the past, long before any of us were in these seats. So I think it's just fair that we can have a look at it. There's enough of us that we live in all these different areas in town, and we can get the feedback from people before it proceeds and before it blows up. So, because once the build starts, you're not rewinding it, you're owning it for the next 100 years, right? That's why it's very important, and I'm really glad, Khalid, that you and your team understand this, because the other part of this is, it provides another level of assurance for administration to know they're making the right decision as well, right? So it's all the team effort here, is that we're all on the same page with this proceeding, because when you start doing these projects in these existing neighborhoods, and maybe the style of house, like the front car garages, and yes, maybe there was a cutaway from the old house, but normally the cutaways in these older areas are for one car. Now people want access for 2 cars into a double car garage in the front yard. And those houses that are in some of these newer areas like the Hamptons and Highwood Village. So do they fit into the Southwest type of neighborhood? So I love it. I think it's great. I think it's gives all of us a better look and a better voice as to what's going on. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mr. Snodgrass, and thanks, Khalid. As we were going through this land use bylaw, I was a bit concerned that some of these decisions in gray areas were going to be put on the shoulders of staff. And I think this is a good team approach, that we can all come together and make the decision together, and I'll understand why that decision is made. I have to say, I saw a new build on Mayor Snodgrass's road today, and I saw it had a front drive garage, but it was set back from the front of the house. And I thought it was a great way to incorporate that home into that neighborhood, keeping the integrity of that neighborhood and that community feel, but allowing them to have that front drive garage. Kudos to planning for working with, or the builder for coming up with that. So thanks, Lee.
You mean the downsizing for retirement home? They're not getting bugged about that at all. It's gonna be a nice house. But yeah, that's how all these things can be worked out, and I think it's fantastic. So I'll ask for a motion From Councillor Nychuk, the council adopt the infill variance application, council consultation policy, POL 22-109-00 for consultation with the committee of the whole on variance applications within the infill areas of the town as presented.
I will give you that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next lead, waiver of development permit fees. You're doing this one too?
I have Schlein with me here. So.
Oh, Shalaine's doing this one. Fantastic. All yours, Schlein.
Thank you. Hi, Mayor and Council. My name is Shalane Broomfield with the Planning and Development Division. Today I am presenting a request submitted by the applicant Jeff Hamilton, who is with the High River Bike Park Society, to waive the fees for an extension to the development permit for the pump track. There are two prior to release conditions that remain outstanding, technical drawings and fundraising. The fundraising is a condition to ensure the applicant is able to successfully complete the project and ensure taxpayers' money will not be required. Council has waived the extension request fee once before in July of 2020. And this is a community-based project that will see a new asset built and turned over to the town. And the recommendation from the planning division is to waive the extension fee of $250. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Schlein. Yeah, we've done this once before. I don't ever see us, regardless of how long it takes to get the bike park going, I don't ever see us or any council declining this ask. So I'd rather not see it come back. I'd rather see the bike park finished before they need to ask for an extension. So I'm going to ask for the extension to be 24 months, just so that we waste of staff time, waste of council time, waste of Jeff Hamilton's time. Let's just waive it. So be done with it. So any questions from council? Ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn that council waive the extension fee of $250 and provide an extension of 24 months for the release of conditions.
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. I will give you that motion.
Great, thank you.
Very much. Any questions? All in favor? Done. Gives you some time off now, Schlein.
Thanks, Craig.
Operating budget amendment, Gary. I saw his name on there.
Gary, Mayor Snodgrass, Gary is with me today to answer questions, but I'm going to do the presentation today.
Sounds good.
So in 2020, the town, through the capital budget, purchased a new skid steer. During that purchase process, we were introduced to the idea of a municipal trade-in program, which sets it up for an annual payment of $4,500, and we get a new skid steer every year that's under warranty. So we didn't sign up for it at the time, and they gave us a year in which we could decide to opt in or not. So before you is I get the rationale behind entering into that program, as that is our recommendation. So the program, like I said, is $4,500 per year, with the exception of the first year, because there was a model change at the same time we purchased ours. The first year is a little higher at $9,500. We did numbers on a 15-year rotation. So we typically keep our machine, our skid steers, for about 15 years. And when you look at a purchase price of a new machine versus what we would spend on this trade-in program, it was close. And that's not factoring in things like savings we would see because of maintenance of always having a new machine with us. Because like I said, it will always be under warranty. So we shouldn't have anything beyond the odd oil change or new tires. And so that's kind of the program. We did check with Foothills, as well as Town of Turner Valley are on this program already and have been for about 5 years. And they had good feedback with regards to the program. And we are recommending to council that they allow and approve the budget amendment to enter into the municipal trade-in program. And that concludes my presentation today. Gary and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Riley. Any questions from council? I see Councillor Nychuk kind of looking around, looking for something. There's his hand. Got money to do with it. He's going to put his hand up.
Sorry. Thank you for recognizing my multiple hands that I was putting up. I can't seem to get rid of them now. Okay, sorry. Thanks, Riley. Appreciate the presentation. Makes kind of sense. A couple of things. We had an initial purchase price last year, right? When we bought the piece of equipment for about $70,000, right?
Well, a new machine is about 70. As we purchased it, I believe it was a little more. I think it was around 80 something. Gary can correct me if I'm wrong.
That was the $82,060.
Yeah, because we do option them out with some attachments and buckets and things like that that don't normally come in a new purchase.
So then if we're looking at this program, that $82,000 skid steer over you said 15 years? We're going to carry this? We would carry it for?
Correct. Our expected use of a machine is of a skid steer is 15 years.
In that same amount of time, we'll spend $150,000 if we prescribe to this program at $4,500 a year. Like the original purchase price plus the $4,500, looking at it in terms of a 15-year, if we would have bought it outright and looked after it, maintained it, plus operating costs. But really, this looks like an okay deal. Other than they want us to spend some money to retrofit this piece of equipment we just bought last year. That one I don't quite. What's the emissions control? Is that their own idea of what the emissions need to be, or is that some kind of a federally, provincially regulated thing? Because that's what's upping it to $9,000 this year, right? It's an emissions control thing they want to retrofit.
Gary, I'll let you answer that one.
Yeah, that's correct. So with the upgraded system this year, they have to go to a Tier 4 engine, which is federally regulated. Ultimately emissions specs and controls. So pretty much any machine going forward will be Tier 4 no matter what.
But we just happen to buy the last Tier 3, and so we have to upgrade it.
Yeah, we got lucky. We got lucky last year. We actually bought one of the last 2019 models they had last year. So if we would have missed out on that in 2020, we would have actually already paid Tier 4 pricing last year. But like I say, we just got lucky they had one left and gave us a little savings last year.
All right. Just a quick question on, do you have an idea on average maintenance? If we, I don't need an exact number, but do we spend $5,000 a year to maintain the skid steer? I mean, that's not a lot of, it's not hard to hit $5,000. I've got forklifts at work that cost lots of money every year to maintain. So.
Yeah, I don't think we're that high, to be honest. Just we're still fairly low hours on that machine. So yeah, I would guess it's probably just an estimate, probably around 3, maybe 3 to 4.
Yeah, close enough. Just an idea. And that hourly ceiling, I think it was 400 hours a year. We're at about 350 now. You guys are going to be comfortable with that? We're not going to. I guess there's a way to redo the deal in the future if all of a sudden we're using the skid steer twice as much, right?
Yeah, we're right now our use is going to be, we're projecting for the year between about 350. It gives us absolutely enough buffer for kind of what we're doing. And then the other kind of real nice part of the project is that there's no contractor commitment. So if we do it for 2 years and decide it doesn't make sense and our hours are creeping up, we can end at any time and just maintain whatever machine is in our possession at that time and just rework it into the 15-year schedule.
Awesome, Gary. Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Not a problem.
No further questions. I'll ask for a motion from Councillor Nychuk. Council approved the budget amendment for participation in the skid steer municipal trade-in program for the amount of $9,500 in 2021 and $4,500 for each additional year that the organization chooses to participate in the program. Funding for the program will come from fleet reserves.
Glad to make that motion for you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Gary. Thanks, Riley.
Thanks.
Council remuneration recommendation. Jody?
Good afternoon again, Mr. Mayor and Council. The purpose of this presentation is to review council remuneration. This is done every 4 years in preparation for a new council coming into office to ensure the rates are fair and equitable across other municipalities that are similar to ours. Administration gathered information from 15 Alberta municipalities. However, we narrowed in on 5 that are comparable to High River for population. As attached in the council package, you can see the municipal data that was collected, and then also see which of the 5 that we actually narrowed in on. In reviewing the salaries, administration found that both the salaries for mayor and councillors are within the average that we looked at those 5. Council average came out to $28,065, and High River councillors are at $30,757. When we looked at the mayor, the average was $61,720, and High River mayor's salary is $61,515. Therefore, administration is recommending that the salaries remain the same for the 2021 to 2025 council term. However, in the review, administration noted that the per diem rates that we have right now are just a flat rate of $125. And a number of other municipalities take an approach that is directly correlated to the time required. For instance, for a meeting that takes up to 4 hours, having that $125. If it's over 4 hours, but up to 8 hours, a rate of $225. And if there are any meetings that are over 8 hours, looking at a rate of $350. Given this, administration is recommending that our per diem schedule be amended to include this staged approach to the per diems based on the time commitment. And as noted in the council package, the mileage and cost of living adjustments are handled for council in the same manner as for staff. So administration is recommending that this remains the same. Given all of that information, are there any questions regarding this information?
Councillor Masterman. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks. Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, Jody. I have one question for clarification and then a very quick comment or suggestion as well. Jody, could you just clarify the per diem? Just because the way it appears there, it looks like councillors get paid to be at council meetings or board meetings or committee meetings, that type of thing. Like if we go to Shepherd Park as a council rep, and that's not the case unless things are changing. And if you could just clarify that, Jody, that'd be great. And then I have a comment too.
Very good point. Thank you for bringing that up, Councillor Masterman. The per diems are only for meetings that are over and above the regular council meetings and any board and committee meetings. It's actually referred to as, I'm looking for the actual wording in the policy. It covers travel expenses incurred to meet with individual residents and representatives of community organizations, and it is for anything over and above. So if you had to travel to Calgary or something outside of our local jurisdiction here. Does that help answer?
Yes, that definitely does help answer. Thank you. And if I could, Mayor Snodgrass, I just wanted to also mention, and again, Jody or anybody else, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see the information about council remuneration on the website. And I'm just thinking things like, right now people are running for council, they're thinking about running for council, And as we all know, none of us do it for the money, but I still think it's important that it be on the website as one of the things about, what's involved in being a counselor. And there isn't a lot on that actually on the website that I could see sort of the, what is involved in the duties and when we meet. And of course, I know that could change with the first council meeting of the new council, things like that. But I think, just for the sake of, I've had lots of residents say to me, do you guys get paid for what you do? And I point out that we do and how much. And it's certainly something not just for potential or prospective candidates, but for the public at large, to know as well. So it is their money, they're paying us, and I think they have every right to be told how much it is, and that they shouldn't have to search too hard on the website to find that information. So just a suggestion. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councillor Masterman. We can definitely include that information on the information page that we have right now for the election. We can also look at, and actually we're already starting to look at updating the council remuneration policy to make that clear, to have that included possibly as an addendum to that policy. Another piece that we're looking at incorporating in the policy with an update in early 2022 is for it to be no longer a staff recommendation for remuneration. We're looking at creating a task force of locals that can actually sit on that task force, and then they can bring that recommendation forward to council, so that it gives it a little bit more of an arm's length and it not being administration bringing that forward. So I appreciate Councillor Masterman, because you kind of nicely set that up for me to explain.
Thanks so much, Jody.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't have a way of raising my hand. It just disappeared on me. So I have to just put up my hand. I was going to mention that meeting thing because I think it did give the wrong impression totally. And the way we've always considered it, it was any meeting that was outside of High River for that per diem. The other thing is, I know in some of the comparisons that you have from other municipalities, they have health benefits and technology benefits and stuff. And I'm wondering if we should include that in the policy, because internet benefits, cell phone benefit, and the health plan. It's councillors are not eligible for the pension plan, municipal pension plan, but the health benefit plan is paid for completely by the town as well.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Yeah, we did make note of any significant shifts like that. So, for instance, the pension or benefits, when we were doing our comparison. For the municipalities that we did narrow in on, they were, as far as we can tell, they were very similar to High River when we were looking at the salary range. However, I do agree that it's something we should look at when we review the policy.
There is another little glitch in the benefit package, in that it only goes up to covering anybody 69 years or less. And if you go over that with our current health plan, and there is possibility that you will be getting councillors that are over 69 years of age, they are not covered any longer.
Thank you for that.
It's good information, something that Councillor Kinghorn should take under consideration.
Well,
Next term.
well, that's me for the last 5 years or so.
Okay, thanks, Don. And thanks, Jody. Ask for a motion from Councillor Kinghorn. Council supports the proposed recommendation for council remuneration for the 2021 to 2025 mayor and council term.
Thank you, Mayor. Good one. I will give you that motion. I concede.
Leave the die alone. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jody.
Thank you.
Council correspondence requiring action. Donation to the High River District Healthcare Foundation. Who's Karen speaking to this? Or do we need it? There she is.
Yeah. So hi there again. The High River Healthcare Foundation is looking for donations for their annual Healthcare Foundation auction and to help raise money for local healthcare. Due to COVID-19, the dinner has been canceled, but there will be a big screen harvest party, a 50-50 draw, and an online auction. Administration is asking Mayor and Council to make a $1,000 donation to the High River Healthcare Foundation.
Thanks, Karen. I think the number one thing that needs to be fixed up here is that it should not be $1,000. It should be $2,500. That's what we gave last year. And part of our commitment to this foundation. So questions, Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. And yes, I was going to propose that motion, but it's a great idea. I have a question for Councillor Cooey, if I could ask her. I know it because she wrote the letter, and I'm just curious because the letter says, you know, would you make a donation for our auction? I don't think, unless I'm missing something in it, I don't think it's saying, you know, last year the town donated $2,500, and would you consider making another financial donation, which would just kind of make it clear that you're not just looking for an auction item, but actual. And Kathy, I can just leave that with you if you want, and you can bounce that around, and unless you want to make a comment back.
I'm happy to answer that. The original sponsorship letter was sent to council in April, and we'd had a number of changes or some changes to the structure of the agenda, and I believe it was overlooked. I know I didn't catch it myself. So the second letter that was forwarded after we didn't receive sponsorship was for support of the auction. So that's the letter that was included. There was a sponsorship letter indicating the different levels that went out to council in April. So I apologize. I should have probably reissued that as part of this. And next year, we're going to get it figured out.
No, totally understandable. Thanks so much for that clarification. Mr. Mayor, I do have a question. We discussed this back on October 13th of 2020. And that was when we made a motion and passed a motion to donate $2,500 that year. And then we said, and to direct administration to return to a future meeting with a draft sponsorship policy. I'm just wondering, have I missed something? Like, is there a draft sponsorship policy, or is this something that fell through the cracks, or what?
Chris?
Thank you, Mayor Snodgrass. No, there is no draft sponsorship policy. Staff were doing the research on that, and it was not, with some of the changes that we undertook here, not within their higher level priorities. And then we've also had some staff changes that undertook in that area. So it is still on our work program, and it will be something that we will focus some of our attention on over the next few months to get resolved and updated.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Chris.
Ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman that mayor and council donate $2,500 to the High River Healthcare Foundation harvest party.
I'm happy to make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass. Thank you.
All in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Gooey. Karen, Sunset Drive-In.
So on August 28th, 2021, the High River Sunset Drive-In held an event for the Rally for Hospice to raise money for end-of-life care at the Foothills Country Hospice. The intensification of use major event fee was paid in the amount of $250, and the High River Sunset Drive-In is requesting a refund for their intensification of use major event fee.
Any questions? I get it. Councillor Cooey.
Thanks. Just one clarification. Kieran, just curious who the intensification application should come from. In this case, it looks like it came from the drive-in. In another case, I know it came from the organization. So I'm just curious, what is the right process for going forward in doing those intensification applications?
I can step in here, Karen. I don't think that we have declared whether it needs to come from the High River Sunset Drive-In or if it needs to come from the event coordinator. I think planning is willing to accept it from either.
Okay, perfect. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Asked for a motion from Councillor Cooey that the mayor and council direct administration to waive and refund the $250 application fee related to the intensification of use major event fee paid.
I will give you that motion. It'll be additional funds going to a good cause.
Exactly. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. 2, replica elevators. Jody?
Yes. Hello, Mayor and Council. I wanted to speak to this email that came in. Gayleen Merkel and her father, Einar Franson, came into the town office to follow up on their email. And at that time, when I was discussing with them, they were speaking about the replica grain elevators that Mr. Franson has constructed and recently donated to a number of organizations. They do have one more replica grain elevator that they would like to donate, and they would like the town of High River to accept that donation. They are hopeful that it could be placed in a location that can be enjoyed by the community. And while it would have been better for them to attend as a delegation, they were unable to do so. So that's why I am here presenting this information to you as correspondence for action. So in your council package, hopefully you have seen the photos of the replica grain elevator. And although it's painted with Saskatchewan, they have said that it can easily be painted to, say, Alberta or High River or really anything. They did have some concerns about it being placed in like a remote park space, like a remote green space, just in the hopes that it wouldn't be vandalized because it was just kind of off on its own in an area. But they were pretty excited to see if council would consider accepting a donation like this.
Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. I love this project. Mr. Franson has done incredible work on these elevators. I love the fact that that High River has been offered one, and I'm just going to throw this out there because I didn't see it mentioned, but that Shepherd Family Park might be a very good place for it because there is a caretaker there on site, and there are people there quite regularly as well. And so just want to throw that out there for consideration.
Thank you. Any other questions? Ask for a motion from Councillor Masterman, the council direct administration to work with Gayleen Merkel and Einar Franson to accept the donation of a replica elevator, and that administration return to council with proposed locations for consideration.
I'll happily make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jody. And you're up for the next one, the EMS levels of service supporting communities.
I think Chris is actually going to speak to this one.
Thank you.
That'd be me, Mayor Snodgrass. This issue has been kind of circulating for quite some time around communities regarding the delays for EMS response for ambulance service to certain rural communities and starting to expand into other rural communities. So we took a look at it. We've had some conversations among the other CAOs in the CMRB, and this is a draft resolution that they'd like to take forward to the AUMA conference this fall. There are similar resolutions that have been floating around from other communities in other rural jurisdictions up north. And this, the rationale is to continue putting the political pressure on the province to increase the level of service for EMS response. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. So I'll quickly share my personal experience with this when I got sent to South Calgary Health there a month or so ago, back in July. And it was just for a blood infection, everybody, not just, but it wasn't anything else. Some of the things I've heard on the street. But anyways, when they were sending me and I was getting loaded up into the ambulance out front, there was 3 ambulances in a row. And talking with the, because I know a lot of the paramedics in High River, didn't recognize this one, so asking him where he was from and everything, and the frustration came instantaneously. That ambulance was called to come and pick me up in High River and take me to South Calgary Health. It was dispatched, those guys were in the northwest corner of Calgary that came down to High River to pick me up. He said the other 2 ambulances that are just in front of us, they are also from Calgary. I said, well, where are ours? And he said, don't know, probably northwest Calgary. He said, we probably passed each other. Like it's a mess right now. Like it's all over. And you know, Chris's words that, you know, is it significantly impacting High River right now? Maybe, maybe not. But I thought that was quite the joke. And then got into a good conversation with them on the way to, with the paramedic on the way to Calgary, is just how frustrated the paramedics and EMS staff are themselves. Like it's off the rails is really what's going on here. So I'm more than happy to support this motion. So Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and I appreciate that personal testimony. At the Foothills Regional Emergency Services Commission, we've talked about this issue several times, and all the municipalities have come with their own horror stories about their ambulances being pulled away from their own communities, and you know, looking for some kind of answers. And right now, so far at least, there hasn't been the political will to fix this issue. And so I think whatever pressure we can bring, you know, through AUMA or you know, our own council individually, you know, the better it would be. So thanks so much.
Councillor Cooey.
Yeah, just you know, a little further to your experience, there was a recent news story on the local radio station that an ambulance was called to respond to High River from Kananaskis, and it is only a matter of time that there is going to be a serious situation or you know, a death or serious injury because there wasn't an ambulance to respond. And I think we all need to, as Albertans, as municipalities, say that this isn't right. We all expect in a reasonable time there to be care at our door, and that's obviously not happening.
There's also the incident, and I think they caught it, well, I know they caught it before it actually took before the ambulance got too far, but there was an ambulance dispatched out of Fort McMurray for somewhere in southern Alberta. It got caught before, probably before Red Deer, hey? Got him turned around. Jesus. Oh, good. Our government. So that's for a motion from Councillor Moore that the province of Alberta, in consultation with municipalities, develop a plan to improve the delivery and performance of the ambulance system. Municipalities are recognized and compensated for the role they play in support of the provincial healthcare system.
I will make that motion, Mayor Snodgrass.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Carried. Okay, the additional, one of the additional items added to today's agenda is item 8.5, being the Rotary Pathways Project. So got Jim Ross is with us as well. So, you know, this thing's kind of got off the rails. And the reason why I want it brought back is so that everybody involved gets back on the same page. Where it started out for myself, where it started out was some hand trimming and, you know, some manpower to take care of these trails, and we're now into it with mowers and equipment and stuff. So I'll call it straight up. In my mind, there's failures along the way with how this was, you know, how the plan, and then the plan did not come back to council before, you know, things were really starting to get going here. And so there's just some missteps along the way from all entities in my mind. So prior to going any further, because there's extensive mowing that has taken place back there, not much more than I was aware of. And when I walked through there yesterday with the family, I was shocked as to how much mowing and everything had taken place back there. So just so that everybody is on the same page with where we're at, this is back in the Mercer Hughes lands, and try to go through my slides here if this thing will let me. Some of these pictures are a little more aggressive than others, but so I want to go back first. So that's kind of what the trail system looked like prior to, and a lot of the, to be clear, a lot of the trails that are back in there are trails that Les Rempel, that I see Les is with us today as well, that Les carved through that development that he owned for the residents of Beechwood to use, not just the residents of Beechwood, we were all in there. And it's formed a lot of these paths, and they've grown back in, and they look good and everything else, and we all enjoy it. But I have my own personal thoughts on how far we go with this new program. Now, I don't want everybody to think that I think this is all horrible and everything, because that's the current state of some of this stuff. When the bush mower went through, that can all be repaired and removed, and a lot of this will come back. But where we're at today, that's one of the paths that's been mowed through that I think Les, you had mowed before, but this is the recent. So what we're left with are these kind of 8-inch stumps. Is part of my concern now as to how we go forward. That's just the depth of from the natural terrain to the depth of the actual trail that we're dealing with now. So there's been a lot of work. So where I want to go is to make sure that council is aware of where we're going with this pathway system, we were not provided the clarity as the plan was being developed. But as this is town land, it's the 7 of us who are ultimately responsible for what goes on back there. So I just want to open it up to conversation and get an update from Jim as to, and Jim and Duncan and Les that are all here, as to where we see this proceeding. So I'll open it to you, Jim.
Well, Craig, thanks for making time for us on your agenda. We appreciate the opportunity to make sure that there is clear communication about what we have in mind and what your expectations are. I should say that what you have seen, and anyone else who's been back there, is the first stage of construction. And I would say you're looking at it at its ugliest, most alarming point. And the pictures that you've shown, you know, that's how it looks there right now. However, the stumps and the most torn up areas are the shortest areas. Most of the trails don't look like that right now. But what you showed us is real, obviously. The next stage is leveling and smoothing that out, and that is going to make quite a difference. But I think I just want to back up and let Duncan give us a bit of an overview to see if we are all on the same page as to how we got to this stage.
Okay. Well, I sort of been there for since the very beginning. I have missed one meeting, which was the very last meeting. However, I think over the last, and you know, I can't remember if it's exactly 3, 4, or 5 months, but you know, the Rotary Club approached the town, and we started, and I think both of us in you know, total good faith, putting this project together. There were multiple meetings with town staff that would have included, as far as I understand, circulation to all the town departments. In conjunction then with the town staff, there was a reasonably detailed project plan put together, which CLID was nice enough to post on the website. I believe there's a whole 27 pages of it. And, you know, based on our consultations and project plan development with the staff, we just proceeded in terms of, you know, making the vision happen. So, you know, sort of from our perspective, that's sort of where we sit.
And to restate it in the simplest terms, there are wide, smooth trails throughout a large part of Beechwood, the point of land at the end of 7th and 8th Street, the old power line right of way, the roads in through the old Mercer land, the trails, roads to the wells, the old McLeod Trail or McLeod Trail extension, and the roads to the beehives. These are all wide, easily identifiable, smooth, level trails. But there's one area where that is lacking, and that is around the Northwest Loop, which is a particularly pretty part of that land. And the concept was that we should put one wider, safer, more readily identifiable trail through that Northwest Loop, plus a connector, and that would sort of complete it and be entirely consistent with the bigger trails that are already there. And I have no doubt that when, and hopefully when, not if, assuming we complete this, when it's had a year or so, a year or two to grow back in, it's going to look like all these other trails, and it will be the asset that we are hoping to create.
May I speak for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead, Les.
Another thing that should be noted is that the area that was the roughest, the pictures that you had of where the roughest cuts were made were done in an effort to avoid a couple of spots in the trail where there were some jumps and bike trails that had been created by some kids. So the idea was to avoid destroying those and or having people walk through that area specifically, as well as a couple of points where the trail was right next to the river, and we wanted not to have that risk of people falling back in the river or other erosion happening there. So we did create a couple of new bypasses to avoid those two risk points. Thought that would be a better long-term solution. And one thing to recognize in my history with this is that we made a point of mowing those paths every couple of years in order to maintain a grassed pathway. If you don't do that, then the shrub grows in and it makes people walk in a very narrow path, like what has happened there. And then you have these ruts that are created, which again is problematic in the wintertime especially. So having a wider mowed area allows people to walk side by side freely down the path and not have ruts or pathways, cow paths, if you will, created in the walkways. So there was a bit of rationale to why we did it historically, as well as why we thought it might be a good plan today.
And we recognize that there are lots of people that prefer the narrower, more windy goat trail paths through the brush, and there's still kilometers and kilometers of those. Making one more clear, wide trail is by no means getting rid of the majority of those little paths that spiderweb all through that area.
Understood. Councillor Masterman.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks, guys, for showing up today to talk about this. And you're right, Jim. There are a lot of people who prefer the single track trail idea to having a 6 foot wide trail that 3 or 4 people can walk abreast. But I think the thing that has caused me some concern right from the start is Rotary does some incredible work in this community and around the world. But Rotarians are not professional trail builders, and you're not trained unless I'm missing something here. You're not trained in building recreational trails through natural areas like this is, and any parks, any places that have been developed for and trails are a big part of them, have been done by professionals. And I know you talk about places that have been mowed will grow back in and they'll be beautiful. In the meantime, we're left with these 6 to 8 inch high spikes that are not safe. They're not safe for people to, and yes, I walked through one of your police tape barriers that somebody had ripped down today, and a sign that said don't enter, trail closed. Of course, people are not going to obey those. People have been using that area for years. So people are going to go into these areas, and they're just not safe the way they are right now. People are going to trip. They could fall and actually impale themselves on these things. And I'm just saying, I'm not sure that we have time for to allow this to grow in and I think Craig touched on this in his opening comments. The motion that was made by Councillor Nychek back in February, was for administration to work with Rotary. Never in my wildest dreams did I think that work would be proceeding without us, council, getting a look at the plan and knowing what was planned, so that we could ask questions. We are responsible for this area. This is a natural treasure, and And right now, the people of High River who are using that area are not, they're seeing this treasure being trashed. And I'm sorry, it just, you know, our mutual friend used to, Bill Fowler used to say, whatever you say, don't ever say with all due respect, because it means just the opposite. But I actually do mean it in my heart when I say this with all due respect to you guys, because you're such great community people, all three of you and your organization. But it's just it's disturbing to me what's happening out there, and I just worry about where this might be going. You haven't even, you know, I understand from Craig that there's bobcats in the future, and perhaps other heavy equipment. I don't know. I'm just very, very nervous about where this is all going.
I wonder if it might be helpful if Les could comment on the actual work that has been done, and more specifically what's remaining to be done, at least in terms of how we picture it, to make sure that there's no misunderstanding, to help you make a fully informed decision.
Go ahead, Les.
Okay. So the step one was to go in with a rough cut and to take out enough of the brush that we could actually work in it. It does need a second mowing effect to trim off those stumps again, and then there's a machine that's called a shaper, for lack of a better term. It would further level the area out and reduce some of the cow trail effect that's there. It is going to create a smoother walking surface, and the intention was never to leave these spikes there. That happened as a result of the stop work order effectively, so we didn't do any more. And it is a small portion where those are, you know, probably the worst for sure. But again, it's like starting any project. There's going to be a point where it's going to look rough, and then there's a cleanup stage and a final stage where it's going to be cleaned up and ready to use. And those stumps, just like what you see in those pictures, were there 30 years ago when we first started plowing the pathways as well. And it takes repeated work to maintain a trail system like that. And if you want to have the other part that I think is worth noting, and that is that the intention of the pathway system was to create a place where people could walk that would be signed and safe, and people wouldn't get lost. And so it's very easy in a forest like that for people to get disoriented, especially near dusk. And so our thought was, well, let's make a clear pathway so they can find their way home and not have to worry about finding an ambulance to stick out there in the boonies. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing it at the most disruptive stage of work. It's not in the finished product by any means. You're seeing it at the worst point, and the next steps will clear out the stumps that exist in a few areas, level it further, and leave a proper, clean trail. I think, is that the objective? Yeah, and there's no question that the effect of doing the mowing and so forth is going to be disruptive, and it will have to grow in. It won't be. It'll take till next year for it to grow in and be nice and grassy again, for sure. But that's the way it is with any kind of project. You have a process that has to go through.
But what you're seeing now is not the finished product. Unfortunately, you're seeing it at the worst, ugliest stage.
Okay, so I want to get back to, the reasons for this starting all at the start, reasons why we're doing this at all. If you go back there, to me, it's not an area you can get lost in. You go north, you hit the Highwood River. You go south, you hit 12th Avenue. You go east, you hit the town of High River. You go west, you hit Roy Simpson's crop and you see 12th Avenue. We have never had a search and rescue operation.
Oh, we have had several of our own. In the time that we lived there, So I beg to differ, Craig, that in the time that we lived there, we had several people who were lost, a couple of people who crossed the river to make a phone call back to our place to say, how do I get home? So it is possible for people, and I realize that you may not, because you may have a better sense of direction, but if you get out there in the dark, I think you may find it's not quite as
well. And here's
the fire chief was quite clear that they have trouble locating people who are calling for help.
Who are we the other question is who are we making this accessible to? Because regardless of what you do the paths for, there, you know, it is a wilderness. It is a wilderness area, and there's a level of ability, physical ability, that you need to have before you step into that. You know, we do these paths. It's not going to be you're taking your scooter back there, and you know we're not like so. Another concern I have is the more we do that, are we not increasing the liability for the town to be, you know, we're going to end up with more people back there that actually should not be back there because they don't have the ability to do that. So, you know, that's one concern I have. I have a very big concern with the future maintenance of this area. But like I said to Jim, you know, maybe that's, you know, calling it the future maintenance on the tax dollars being spent, but that's also probably something I'm just using to defend where, you know, my thoughts are on where we go with this project. The removal, when I was in there yesterday, Les, and I looked at these pathways and I thought, my God, to go in there with this shaper, which I understand is kind of like a rototiller that goes in and digs up all the stumps and everything. And you know, how are we going to remove all that debris? Like it's an enormous amount of work. And
well, Craig, you know, we've removed all the debris we've taken out.
Just 2 seconds, Jim. The enormity of the project is going to take a lot of earthwork. Just period. Like Les, it's one thing for you to have gone back in there just with mowers every couple of years, and you know, I get it. You go through with a brush mower, and that's it. But we're talking about leveling things out, removing these stumps out now. That's direct earthwork now. So I'm concerned.
No, I guess
how intensive this gets back there, you guys. Period.
I was not expecting to see more than what we had done in the past in terms of the maintenance, the effort to do that. I guess all I can say is we did it 30 years ago and it didn't seem all that difficult, and now it has just gone to committee. That's all. At that time, of course, it was my own land, and I just said I'm going to drive my tractor through here and do it. So.
Yeah, before it was private land, now it's municipal. Changes everything, right? So,
well, it changes lots of things for sure.
Greg, 2 or 3 things you mentioned. Maintenance, I mean, it's obviously a valid concern, but trails like what we're picturing are throughout that entire area now, except this northwest area. And there's no maintenance occurring, and they're just fine. I won't enumerate them. I did once already, but there's probably 5 times the length of trails that are wider and smooth, 5 times compared to what we're proposing to complete it. And as far as the debris goes, most of the debris, you know, the cutting that's occurred, the mowing that's occurred, if you've walked through there, and I know you have, and Bruce, you too, you don't see any. It was all removed. And the most debris that's going to be created has already been created and taken away. There's no sign of it at all. I've been a little bit at ground level, but not much. And, you know, you mentioned access and who's it for. And I think that's getting back to the core point of why we're doing this. Residents in the immediate vicinity are well aware of what's there, but I don't think that this shouldn't just be background for people, the backyard for people in that immediate vicinity. It's a beautiful asset for High River, and I think it's appropriate. when it's publicly owned, that more residents are aware of it, more residents can have access to it, and that, you know, we make sure that all High Riverites know they're welcome there. And you have to be a little bit younger and nimble to use those narrow cow trails right now, but not everyone is. And just completing that network of trails with another one around the northwest area that anyone can comfortably access seems entirely consistent in making it accessible to a wide cross-section of people.
I've never been called younger and nimble. Thanks, Jim.
Okay, we'll open it to questions for council. You've kind of heard a couple of sides here, so I want a few more of you to chime in. Councillor Kinghorn.
Thanks, Mayor. Well, I was called old today, so I can chime in. Thank you, Mayor. I guess I'm trying to visualize what you're doing out there, and I appreciate where you're coming from. And Rotary is a great organization, has done a ton of things for this community. From my perspective, without seeing a plan, generally when stuff like this comes to council, we get a big book and it's pages and pages and pictures and all kinds of stuff that really gives us a good perspective on what's the plan. I'm going to encourage you guys. I'd like you guys to take me. I want to go out there, and I think more members of council should go out there and literally walk this area that we're talking about and just really get a handle on what you want to do. That's my suggestion. Thank you.
Councillor Cooey.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and thanks to Jim and Duncan and Les. I appreciate you sharing your vision. Now, we often ask people to pause and understand and wait to see our vision. So I really needed to hear the process from you and understand how we're going to get there. You know, when you think about clearing this land and what impact might a bobcat or something like that have in that area, but you've talked about the equipment that you're going to have in there. I like Councillor Kinghorn's idea. Let's take a walk there. I guess my one question, because I'm still not really clear, let me back up a little bit. I think part of the problem why we're here today is because the process of how we got here and the lack of process. And as Craig said, I think there was blips along the way from council, starting there with council in that. And so, and part of the problem is for us is our accountability to the public and to the users and who typically have a say. And not that I want to see a page and page report, because I think we need to get away from those. And in particular, when it's a community project, let them run with it. But I think in particular with the community project, we also need to engage more. So, we missed that step. Users weren't able to be engaged, and nor was the public. And we also don't want to bog things down. So it's finding that balance. But I guess my question is how extensive is this? I understood there was a loop. Is there more than a loop? And maybe the trip out there would help explain that. But I'm trying to understand how extensive this trail system is.
Can I speak to the engagement part? Councillor Cooey, I'd just like to speak to the engagement part because of your question, because this was one thing that we specifically addressed in our meetings with administration. And where we ended up on this is that it was felt that this conforms sufficiently with the new green space open plan that the consultation had already in fact been done as part of that plan, and we were just executing details of the plan in one specific area. So that's how that ended up. And notwithstanding that, there is the project plan that CLID has posted probably 10 days ago now on the town website that, is the complete plan as to, the background, where we are now, what's going to happen and where we're going in the future. So, there hasn't been a vacuum in terms of planning.
Yeah, thanks, Duncan. I appreciate that comment. I think too, that's a plan that is a little bit out of the box. And I think going to take the people sitting at this table some getting used to both administration and I think the council people sitting at the table getting used to how that process is going to flow. And really, this is the first kick at the cat with community-led projects. So I think, again, that's partly why we're sitting at this table having this conversation. Everybody's trying to feel their way through it. So I appreciate your time and effort and energy to bring this forward. I did have one suggestion for signage. They felt that one of the users felt that signs should only say "enter your own risk" and "no open fires." They felt by saying this place is not how did they word it? It is not patrolled. That's an invitation for 18-year-olds or 17-year-olds to go down and party. I don't know about that, but I did kind of agree with the no patrollers. That's just sharing that from a resident.
So I need to rewind one piece that's we're kind of dancing around it, and that is process problems from step one. When the motion was made, it was talked about, Michael said, you can watch the video on February 22nd. Michael talked about for administration to work with the Rotary group on the high level plan, is what the words were. And that was the motion that was made. My assumption is that we were working on a plan. We were not working on the work. Like, it wasn't just work with Rotary and go do it. The motion stated we are working on a plan. That's where this thing, in my words earlier, that when I say this thing's gone off the rails, it absolutely has, in my mind, the whole project. And council was never aware of what was going to be, the network maps and all of this stuff, and the actual project plan never ever came to council. The original motion was made in February 22nd. And Duncan, you and I had talked across the street a couple of times as to, how's the project coming? And, oh yeah, we're working with admin, and, and you're working with the communications team, and there's a plan coming into place. And, my thing was, oh, well, it'll be coming to council at some point in time. And because in the motion, and in the motion that got put into the minutes, talked about the proposed plan. And again, my assumption was we are working on the plan, not the work. And what was missed in there was, and that administration come back to council to present the plan before any work. Like, that level of clarity, I guess, just had to be in there. And, that's where my frustration, because I think a lot of what we're dealing with right now could have been, we could have been ahead of it. We wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
Yeah, and Craig, I don't think any of us would disagree with that at all.
Yeah, that's not that's not a Rotary thing. That was our administration that should have brought that back. I don't want to be
right and
people under the bus, but there's accountability that needs to be.
Yeah, and so I think in terms of that, those comments, I don't know that we're not entirely on exactly the same page. And I think at this point, where do we go from here? How do we, for lack of a better term right now, fix this and move forward?
So the one thing, Craig, I mean, Bruce brought up the idea of the risk of the stumps. I think at this point, the rational thing to do is to get rid of the stumps. We need to clean that up so that the risk is gone. Yeah. And maybe that's probably, and that would have been our second stage of effort anyway. But if we don't do that, then you're right. There's going to be a trip hazard there that will not go away without some mechanical device at this point.
And will become worse in winter with some snow cover.
No, I agree 100%. So Les, you were talking about when you did and you were talking about a second mowing going in there to remove those stumps. Can we can that mower go back in there and just go right to the ground level basically and trash those stumps, or?
Yeah, that is the method. So you go in there initially and you take out the heavy brush, then you go back and mulch it again, and it may take a second trip or a third trip, and in my experience, originally we went through it a number of times before we felt it was safe, because we rode our horses through there.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be riding your horses through stumps like that either, because that's not a good thing either. So
exactly.
But it does take effort. You just can't say, well, let's do a little bit and say it's going to be okay. You have to actually go and finish the job.
And maybe that's the right answer. Maybe let us finish that northwest loop.
At this point, it's fixing a risk point.
Yeah. And that's the thing, Jim, that, my personal opinion, I do not want to see any further. I don't want it, other than going in and getting those stumps taken care of and mowing. I don't want to see any dirt work go on in there for me ever. But I think what needs to happen is that we should find a day here quickly and allow other council to go back there and see what the actual loop is. Because the other issue is that there's been, when you and Michael and I went back there, Jim, when this was just about to start, and you were showing us where the actual mowing would take place, and it was the one loop. You were talking about the one loop that hooks back up. It's extensively more than that with the mowing, a lot more. I was back there yesterday. I was very, very surprised at the amount of mowing back there. So, all of that needs to be remowed. When we go back there with council, we can discuss about smoothing and doing all that stuff with the, what you guys vision as finishing the project. But for me, in my family, I consider ourselves one of the higher users back there. I just say, let's get rid of the stumps and call it a day. And I think we can do better things for accessibility for people in High River to access river, views of the river and being along the river a lot safer over in the Wallaceville area where it's all flat. You can drive in there, you can park your car, the road's still there. You can get out and run your scooter along the river and have a little area where scooters can park and look across the river. But that's a different conversation. But this area, Jim, one of the problems that I have with the municipal world is that as soon as a piece like this becomes public land, it's like we have to do something with it. Like municipalities just can't not do it. Like it's just, and you get a lot of pressure to do these things. For me, the asset of that area is leaving it alone. And leaving it as a natural wilderness area. Not all things can be made to be accessible to all people, and nor should they. That's just my opinion on it. That
Greg, I think you've hit the core question here. And we each have our personal viewpoints. The question is, what's the right perspective for the greater public good, I guess? Yeah. Is it keeping this completely natural, or is it making it more accessible to more people? And I think that's really what this gets down to.
Okay. So I think the next step that we have to do is get a day or an evening picked where Jim, you can take councilors on a tour as to where the Northwest Loop Trail is. I think that's just the next step, and then we'll figure out where we're going. But at this point, I sure don't want to see any further work take place. And yes, it's dangerous right now, but everybody just needs to be careful when you're back in there right now until we get this sorted out. Because when I look at it right now, you know, nature will repair itself in short order, unless you and I both know how fast those willows grow back in through there, and it'll go back within a couple of years. It'll be, you know, it'll be just fine. So if we go back in with dirt moving equipment, you know, that changes that. So that's where I say, yes, Jim, I agree that you and the Rotary and administration were on the same page. The problem is council was unaware of this. When I talked to you on the banks of the river a few times, you know, it was a lot of talk about manual labor, trimming back some trees and making it more accessible. And, you know, one of the Cam that was with you, he asked me straight up, you know, what you see in enhancing this? And I said, nothing. I said, what you see is what makes this area so great. Just leaving it alone. But I'm only one voice. I'm only one vote on this council, and it is municipal public land. So that's, everybody needs to be aware of this, and we'll find a pathway, literally find a path forward. So Councillor Masterman, and then we'll move on. Thanks very much, Jim, Duncan, and Les, for coming and being here to talk about this.
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass, and I'll be really quick. I just think that oversight is so important on projects like this as well. And I don't have a real high level of comfort or confidence that that we're doing the oversight here, that we're actually being out there and we're checking the work that's being done and ensuring that stumps aren't being left for longer than a day or two or whatever they need to be. You know, that vegetation is not being removed just for the sake of removing vegetation. You know, saplings to you and me might just be an encumbrance, but every piece of vegetation out there is habitat. It's wildlife habitat. It's important to that area. It's what contributes to making that area important. And I think one thing that you guys had talked about in your first appearance before council in February was signage. And I do like the idea of, and again, with all due respect to Councillor Cooey, with having enhanced signage out there to help people understand what is this area. You know, how did the town of High River come to own the Mercer property? You know, it's very hard to find anything even on the town website about that. And those of you who were around at the time and involved in council, and just in town issues and affairs, you know the story. But I would love to see some signage out there talking about, you know, how did Beechwood, and I know it's not quite town land yet, but it's going to be, you know, how did Beechwood come to be? The history of Beechwood, some signage, the Mercer property, Wallaceville, you know, how did these natural areas come to be? And signage talking about, you know, the importance to respect these areas as users. And yes, you're always going to have people disrespecting them, but I just think it's important that we that we have some signage to help guide people's enjoyment out there. You know, to anyway. I'll just leave it at that. Craig and I are certainly on on the same wavelength as far as not wanting to see a whole lot more happening out there.
Sorry, Councillor Kinghorn.
Thank you, Mayor. To wrap this up, can I ask that we instruct administration to either Louise or whoever to send out an invite for a meeting within the next 7 days, if that's reasonable to all council and the members of the Rotary that want to take us and go out there and actually get this tour done. I didn't want to just kind of leave it floating around.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely what we need. So you'll take care of that, Chris? Working with Jim, get a date set up. Councillor Moore?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to the volunteer gentleman here that it almost seemed that we're very ungrateful for all of the work that you've done and your interest in improving things for the community. But I don't think that is the case at all. I am looking forward to getting seeing it on a tour and just sitting here with this discussion. I don't want any of you to feel bad about the work that you put in and the reason for the work that you put in. I sure thank you very much for that. We'll get it all straightened out. I'm sure that a vision can be achieved. And but thank you so much for all that you've done and continue to do for the community.
Yeah, Jim, I think all of you understand that this has nothing to do with being ungrateful to any of you for what we're trying to do. The problem that came into play for me was that the lack of understanding for council, who at the end of the day, as you know, Les and Duncan, there's only one group of human beings that really eat anything at the end of the day, and it's the council that allowed XYZ to happen, right? If it doesn't happen properly, it's us that hear about it. So absolutely, we have to be very aware and so supportive of any future direction so that we can answer to it to the public. Period. Although one individual has, but most of them are not going to come after the Rotary group volunteers. They're going to come after the elected officials. So we have to be able to answer with, we can't just say, yeah, well, we didn't know about it. Sorry about that. Go talk to Rotary. It just doesn't work that way. So that's why we need to get council back in line, not in line, but back on the same page with where administration and Rotary are with this and figure out a path forward. So you've got it, Chris. We'll get a little meet and field trip organized so that we know where this loop is and how we're gonna get this thing going. So, all righty. Fair, Jim, Duncan, Les?
Yep, good to go.
Okay, thanks very much. My agenda. Okay, going further, council correspondence. Couple of letters to do with the provincial policing versus the RCMP. And RCMP regular member pay raise. So, Chris, maybe you can just give a couple tidbits as to whether what.
Certainly, I guess the first letter is in regards to changing from a RCMP model to a provincial police force, which will certainly be another topic for discussion. I'm not sure if it's a referendum question this fall or not from the province. The second one is the recently agreed to new rates associated with the pay increase that's retroactive pay. Now, for most communities, it will be a substantial impact for for them to have to come forward and pay that increase. Luckily for us, we have been putting money away for this pay increase. And we'll have enough, more than enough to cover the retro pay and the increases moving forward. That being said, we do, as we head toward that 15,000 permanent population within the community, we will see another substantial jump in our RCMP allocation at that point in time, and hopefully we can avoid that for a period of time so that we can be prepared for it. So those are the two letters that you see before you. One, the notification that they've entered into an agreement that we'll be seeing the retro pay taking place, and the other one in regards to provincial police force versus the RCMP. If there's any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
No questions. We'll move on to one of the additional items, being the item 9.3 that I have added. And this has to do with SiteFinders developers who were proposing the elevator build. Give me 2 seconds. I think I've got a couple of pictures of it. Just so that the public understands what we are dealing with. And the reason why I want this finished, nice picture of Lindsay. Internet wanting to. So that was the elevator build. And the reason why I want to finish this off is because it was the developer has been, working with administration, and was, did a delegation with council. Developer was also contacting council individually, trying to get their individual thoughts on this and trying to get it moved forward. But the problem is for this council is the fact that they want financial contribution from the town, regardless of whether it's taxes or actual unit ownership. And council was not supportive of doing that. And just so that the public knows, give me 2 seconds. Where this was to take place is right at the end of Cold Trail Plaza, just down from Taco Time Fast Gas in this corner. So basically it's a developer that has a small chunk of land that's left here and wants to put something on it, and has come up with this, but needs financial compensation to get it done. So council was not supportive of that. And the developer has since then, what do you call it, Chris? Rescinded all applications and removed all requests in regards to this development. So
that's correct.
Developments have to be funded properly and planned properly, and it's nothing but red flags when a developer's coming in and asking for financial compensation from the town in order to get a certain project done. It's a weird little chunk of land, and for me, it's kind of a weird build to be putting right there as well. So everybody's got their different opinions on architecture, and that's mine. But financial compensation, just council wasn't up to it. That's where that one is. Wanted to finish it off because it was made public in the press, and the community deserves to know kind of where we landed on it. So any questions, comments on that one? All good. So we'll go to COVID update from Chris.
Certainly, just a quick update based upon provincial stats. So far, as we stand, we have 31 active cases as of this morning. I haven't seen today's update, which is about 183 persons per 100,000. In comparison, the Foothills County has 90 active cases and Okotoks has 109 active cases. For Foothills counties, that's 399 or 400 people per 100,000. And for Okotoks, that's 306 people per 100,000 approximately. Our vaccination rate for 12 plus has climbed above 71%. So we're into that 70%. All ages right now is sitting at about 62.5% as of this morning. We have had some cases within town hall and some of our divisions. And so we're watching that very closely. We've had some workplace transmission take place in one of our divisions as well. Masks are now mandatory for all employees within public spaces as per the provincial order as well, outside your workstation. And we're encouraging people to continue working from home until October the 4th, where we'll reassess at that point in time. We'll see where these numbers take us and what that looks like. Some of our higher risk areas continue to be the recreation department for sure, especially with the number of people, the number of members of the public coming in and out. And so we'll continue watching what that happens with any transmission amongst our workers at the recreation department if that does occur. So that's kind of our quick update. I'm open for any questions if anybody has any questions in regards to what's going on and what information that we seem to be getting.
No questions from council. We'll move on to the coal policy update. I don't have anything. The coal policy committee is doing their work with the public consultation and everything. The report is still going to be submitted in November sometime to the government, and we'll see where that'll be the next steps as to what the results of that are. So, Bruce, do you have anything? Nothing? Okay, one question I do have, and Bruce, you can give me your thoughts on this, but because we are not, we're kind of in holding pattern here, waiting for all this to come out. I do not think this standing order of coal policy update needs to be on here on our standing agendas right now. I think it can be removed and can always be brought back up when something comes back up. So I think we're okay to remove it. Okay. Got that, Chris? Jody? Okay. Any further questions, comments from council? Councillor Nychuk?
Thanks, Mayor Snodgrass. Sorry if I missed something at the start of the meeting, writing a note or something, but in regards to the strategic plan, obviously our website is up and running and going. That was one of our top 5 items. Are we going to bring something into the fold to replace that item? And again, sorry if I missed it early in the meeting, if I had my head down jotting a note down or something and I skipped that. So
no worries. At this point, with the election less than a month or about a month away, our intent is not to bring anything forward. The new council will go through a strategic priority setting process in November, specifically November 18th and 19th, I believe. And so new priorities or existing priorities will be renewed at that point in time.
all right, but any of that work that's going on there with any of the remaining 4, that stuff's still coming to council as need be?
Yes.
As Craig said before, the work doesn't stop just because we have an election coming up.
Yeah, those top 4 and the other things that are still active in all the boxes are still being worked on, but we're not adding anything new to the list.
And we're still bringing that forward to council is really what my point was. Anything that requires council is still coming to council. We're not sitting on it till, yeah.
No, that's correct.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah. So, and certainly when you take a look at our top 4 or 5 priorities, website now is complete. We're still working on the water agreement, and we've just got the comments back from the county as of last week. Sent those off to our lawyers for final review. Pool referendums moving forward for the October election date. So that's a new FAQ will be out there, and we'll be doing some mail drops. And the pedestrian bridge RFP closed at the beginning part of September, and we're just reviewing that and going to be issuing that to move forward with the feasibility of a pedestrian bridge across from the northwest. So those are the 4 remaining priorities that are out there. And so work still is taking place.
Thanks very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Further comments? Meeting adjourned 5:04. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.